Many people walk through life never knowing they are radiant, not because the world failed to see them, but because they never paused long enough to see themselves. There is a kind of beauty the mirror cannot show you. It's not reflected in the way your hair falls. It's not defined by a number on a scale. And it's not measured by the words others speak. You may not feel attractive, but attraction in its truest sense is not about vanity. It is about vibration, energy, awareness. It is about how your being affects those around you, how your silence speaks, how your calmness comforts, how your truth disarms. So many people, especially those who are wise, gentle, and deeply spiritual, never realize the full weight of their impact, because their value doesn't shout, it whispers, through presence, depth, and stillness. The world may not teach you this, but the truth is, what makes you deeply attractive is who you are when no one's watching. Now, let us explore these 12 signs, not as superficial affirmations, but as reflections of what has always lived within you. You may discover you've been attractive all along. You just didn't know how to see it yet. Let us begin by entering a space of stillness, a moment where the world's noise is quiet and your awareness begins to sharpen. In this stillness, a deeper question arises: what truly makes someone attractive? We live in a time where attraction is often distorted by filters, curated images, and the illusion of external perfection. But beyond all of this noise, there is a presence within you that speaks louder than any appearance. And this is where the truth begins. Your presence speaks louder than appearance. This may seem like a simple statement, but it carries within it a timeless principle. Presence is not something you apply to your skin or wear like an accessory. Presence is a kind of inner radiance, quiet, steady, and profoundly magnetic. It is the quality of your attention, the depth of your stillness, the clarity of your emotions. When you are fully rooted in your own body, in your breath, in this very moment, people feel it. Without knowing why, they are drawn to it. That is the silent power of presence. Think of someone you've met who instantly calms a room without saying a word. Perhaps it was an older woman sitting on a park bench, gazing into the distance with a quiet strength. Or a man who listens more than he speaks, and when he does speak, every word lands with purpose. These people do not chase attention. They embody presence. And that is the most attractive quality a human being can carry. One of the reasons this kind of attraction is rarely noticed by the person who has it is because it does not need validation to exist. Presence does not seek applause. Presence simply is. It is cultivated in silence. It is formed through self-awareness, and it reveals itself through consistent emotional regulation. Imagine this scenario. You walk into a gathering. The room is buzzing. People are laughing loudly, performing, projecting. But in the corner, there is someone simply sitting with relaxed shoulders, eyes steady, holding a cup of tea with care. Their body language does not scream for attention, but people keep glancing in their direction. Why? Because presence creates gravity. It is the result of stillness cultivated over time. People with presence do not dominate others. They anchor themselves. They are not looking to impress. They are observing, connecting, waiting. They listen more than they speak. Their attention is whole. And in a society where attention is fragmented and energy is scattered, that kind of calm attention is rare and deeply attractive. The Shaolin monks, as you may know, train every day, not only in physical discipline, but in deep inner silence. Their presence becomes so strong, so centered, that even in complete stillness, others can feel their energy. It is not loud. It is not theatrical, but it is undeniable. And so it is with anyone who chooses inner clarity over outer performance. There is also something profoundly relational about presence. In a relationship, especially a romantic one, we are not seeking constant words. We are not looking for someone who always entertains us. What we truly crave is someone whose presence feels like home. Someone who can sit with us in silence, and that silence is not awkward. It is nourishing. Someone who can hold space without judgment. Who can be present without needing to fix, or speak, or solve. That kind of presence is magnetic. And when you carry it, you are already more attractive than you think. Many women and men go through life believing they must constantly improve their appearance, upgrade their wardrobe, perfect their hair, contour their features. But have you ever noticed how someone can look beautiful yet feel shallow? or how someone without conventional beauty standards can be irresistibly attractive because they are so fully there. Presence is not cosmetic. It is energetic, and it can be cultivated. The key is awareness. Start with the body. Are your shoulders relaxed? Is your breath shallow or deep? Do your eyes dart around, or can you rest them softly in one place? The body always reveals the state of the mind. When you train your body to be calm, the mind begins to follow. And when the mind is still, presence emerges. Presence also requires the mastery of emotional noise. We live in constant reaction. Phone notifications, interruptions, emotional dramas, mental clutter. But the attractive person is the one who does not react impulsively. They respond slowly, intentionally. They pause before speaking. They make eye contact when listening. They allow a moment to pass between what is felt and how it is expressed. This pause, this space between stimulus and response, is where presence is born. And in that space, you become a mirror to others. People feel safe to be themselves around you. They stop performing. They start breathing more deeply. Because your presence gives them permission to be present too. Presence is also about integrity. Are your words aligned with your values? Is your posture aligned with your intention? Do your actions reflect your inner world? When these are in harmony, the result is quiet confidence, not arrogance, but deep-rooted clarity. That is irresistible. Let me share a short story. There was once a teacher who was invited to speak at a gathering. When he arrived, he did not say much. He greeted the room with a slight bow and sat down in silence. People whispered, "Why is he not speaking? What is he waiting for?" After several minutes, he looked up and said, "When your silence speaks, your words don't need to shout." And then he began his teaching. But the people later said that it was his silence before the words that they remembered most. His presence had spoken before his voice did. Now let us move gently into the second principle. Self-respect is magnetic. This is not just a phrase. It is a deep inner posture that others feel immediately. A person who respects themselves walks differently. They do not chase. They do not plead. They do not lower their standards to be accepted. Their boundaries are not sharp walls, but quiet fences of clarity. They do not beg to be seen, because they already see themselves. When you carry self-respect, your energy says, "I am whole with or without your approval." This does not mean arrogance. It means that your validation is internal, not external. In relationships, this is especially important, because people are constantly scanning, subconsciously, whether you are emotionally needy or emotionally grounded. Neediness repels, groundedness attracts. You can feel this in someone's posture, in how they say no, in how they don't tolerate disrespect, not with aggression, but with silent detachment. They simply do not allow their peace to be disrupted by inconsistency. That is attractive. And yet, many people confuse self-respect with selfishness. But the difference is clear. Selfishness is based in fear, control, and lack. Self-respect is based in self-awareness, boundaries, and inner fullness. A woman once shared with me that she spent years in relationships where she gave too much, tolerated too much, and lost herself completely. She believed that being endlessly available was the key to being loved. But it only led to being taken for granted. One day, in the silence after a breakup, she asked herself, "What do I really think I'm worth?" It was a painful question, but it awakened something in her. She stopped overgiving. She stopped apologizing for having needs. She started honoring her space, speaking her truth calmly, and choosing peace over people pleasing. And without changing her appearance at all, people began to treat her differently. She walked into rooms with less noise, but more presence, because she now respected herself. Self-respect often starts in small moments. The way you speak to yourself in the mirror, the way you don't answer every message immediately, the way you protect your time, the way you walk away from what no longer aligns. Each choice reinforces your internal value. In relationships, self-respect communicates emotional discipline. It tells the other person, "I have done my inner work. I will love you deeply, but I will not lose myself in loving you." That balance is rare, and it is powerful. Let's reflect on this truth. When you stop chasing others, you start attracting those who are aligned with your energy. When you stop performing, you start connecting. When you stop bending, you start being. And when you respect yourself, you teach others how to treat you. There is an ancient Chinese saying, The flower does not chase the bee. It simply blooms, and the bee comes. When you cultivate your inner self, when you bloom in self-awareness, in presence, and in peace, you do not need to seek validation. The right people will see you. They will feel you. They will be drawn to what you radiate. That is the unseen power of true attractiveness. And it is already within you. Emotional maturity creates safety. Not many people speak of attraction in this way, yet it is one of the most powerful forces that draws others to you, especially in relationships where depth and longevity are desired over fleeting moments of chemistry. Emotional maturity is the quiet strength behind calm eyes, the pause before a sharp word, the soft tone in moments of stress. It is what allows someone to feel safe with you, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. In a world dominated by impulsive reactions, overstimulation, and emotional outbursts, the one who knows how to regulate their inner world becomes rare, and rarity attracts. There is a certain clarity in someone who does not rush to defend themselves, who does not crumble under conflict, who can hold a space, even when tension rises, without becoming consumed by it. That clarity is not loud, it is not aggressive, it is steady, it is patient, it is trustworthy, and in the presence of trust, people relax, they exhale, they reveal. That is when true connection begins. When someone feels emotionally safe around you, they are not performing. They are not guarding every word. They are not strategizing to protect themselves. They are simply being. And the person who makes others feel safe in being themselves is unforgettable. A woman once told me that the moment she knew she loved her partner wasn't during a romantic dinner or a dramatic declaration of love. It was during an ordinary conversation, when she confessed something painful from her past, unsure of how he would respond. He did not interrupt. He did not minimize. He simply listened, nodded gently, and said, "Thank you for trusting me with that." In that moment, she felt seen, not judged, not pitied, just held. That was the moment she realized this is emotional safety. Emotional maturity is not about being perfect. It's about being responsible with your energy. It's about recognizing when your wounds are trying to speak and choosing not to project them onto others. It's being able to say, "I need a moment," instead of unleashing anger. It's being able to say, "I was wrong," instead of defending ego. It's being able to hold space for someone else's pain without needing to fix it. This level of self-awareness is rare because it requires work. It means confronting your own triggers. It means noticing the patterns you've inherited. It means practicing emotional discipline in the small, daily moments. But the reward is profound. You become someone who others trust, lean into, and remember. Not because you spoke the most, but because you held the space best. And in romantic relationships, this becomes sacred. The woman who knows how to remain centered when her partner is overwhelmed becomes a sanctuary. The man who does not shut down or lash out when he feels challenged becomes a foundation. And together, two emotionally mature people create a relationship where growth is possible, where storms don't destroy, and where love feels safe. Safety is not about controlling another. It is about mastering yourself. When you walk into a conversation, do you listen to understand or to respond? When someone criticizes you, do you react with defense or pause with curiosity? When conflict arises, do you run, explode, or remain steady and present? Each of these choices shapes how emotionally mature you are. And others feel it, often before you speak. Let me share a story from a couple who had been together for over 30 years. They were once asked, "What has kept your relationship strong for so long?" The husband replied, "We learned early on that being right was less important than staying connected. So when one of us is triggered, the other listens. We don't escalate together. We take turns calming the fire." This is emotional maturity in action. It is not flashy. It is not dramatic. But it is powerfully attractive. Because in a world that teaches us to shout louder, the one who stays soft becomes magnetic. Now let us gently move into the next understanding. Inner peace radiates outward. The world often tells you that beauty is found in the way you dress, the way you carry your body, the way others respond to you. But none of these have lasting power if the soul behind the body is in chaos. True attractiveness does not come from outer polish alone. It comes from inner stillness. The person who has found peace with themselves emits an energy that cannot be imitated. There is a certain kind of silence that draws others in, not because it is empty, but because it is full of awareness, full of calm, full of presence. This silence is cultivated through solitude, through discipline, through learning how to be with yourself without needing distraction. If you have ever met someone who is deeply peaceful, you know the feeling. Their words are soft but strong. Their movements are unhurried. Their laughter is deep. Their anger, when it arises, is clean, not contaminated by old resentment or unprocessed pain. They are not trying to impress you. They are simply grounded in themselves. And because of that, others feel grounded around them. One woman described her grandmother in this way. She said, "My grandmother was the most beautiful person I've ever known, not because of her face or her clothing, but because of how I felt when I was near her. I felt calm. I felt safe. I felt like I could breathe deeper." What she was describing was not outer beauty, but inner peace. And this inner peace is not something we are born with. It is something we practice. When you sit with your own loneliness, your own fear, your own uncertainty, and you learn not to escape it, but to observe it, breathe through it, and embrace it, you begin to build a quiet strength. This strength is different from the strength the world praises. It does not dominate. It does not control. It simply endures with grace. In romantic relationships, inner peace is the soil from which emotional intimacy grows. If you are not at peace with yourself, you will demand from your partner what you have not given yourself: constant reassurance, attention, validation. But when you are at peace, your love becomes generous. It becomes unpressured. It flows freely, without neediness or fear. Peaceful people are not free from emotion. They are fluent in emotion. They know how to sit with sadness without drowning, how to acknowledge anger without attacking, how to express joy without attachment. They have befriended their inner world, and so they are no longer controlled by it. There is a story from Zen tradition about a young student who asked his master, "What is the secret to inner peace?" The master said nothing. Instead, he walked to a small pond, picked up a handful of muddy water, and stirred it with a stick. "This," he said, "is your mind when it reacts. Turbulent, unclear." He then set the bowl down and waited. Slowly, the water settled. The mud sank to the bottom. The surface became still. He looked at the student and said, "And this is your mind when you observe. When you allow emotions to pass through, not dictate your actions." Inner peace is not about suppressing emotion. It is about allowing emotion to exist without being swept away by it. And this stillness, when cultivated over time, makes you deeply attractive, because others can feel the serenity you carry. You don't need to say much. Your presence does the talking. When people argue over small things, and you choose not to escalate, they notice. When gossip surrounds you, and you choose silence instead of judgment, they notice. When life becomes chaotic, and you remain centered, others are drawn to your steadiness. This is not weakness. It is mastery. Because it takes far more strength to remain peaceful in a storm than to join the storm. And that kind of strength is rare. A man once told me that after dating many women, the one he chose to marry was not the most traditionally beautiful, nor the loudest in a crowd. She was the one who, in moments of tension, remained soft. She was the one who never tried to dominate or compete. When he was overwhelmed, she didn't lecture. She simply sat beside him, quietly, holding space. "She made my world feel lighter," he said. And that's how I knew she was the one. Inner peace doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful in a different way. It makes you resilient, focused, wise. When you cultivate this peace within yourself, you no longer react to every opinion. You no longer chase people who cannot meet you. You no longer force love. You allow it. And in that allowing, you become magnetic. The journey toward emotional maturity and inner peace is not easy. It requires honest self-reflection, consistent practice, and the willingness to sit in discomfort. But each step brings you closer to your most authentic self. And your authentic self, calm, grounded, emotionally clear, is already far more attractive than you may have believed. When you carry a sense of purpose, it becomes difficult to go unnoticed. Not because you are trying to impress others, but because your energy begins to speak a language far more powerful than appearance ever could. A person with purpose walks differently. They speak with clarity, not noise. They love without losing themselves. They attract, not because they are desperate to be seen, but because they are deeply rooted in why they are here. Purpose is not a job. It is not a title. It is not something the world hands you. It is something you cultivate through presence, through discipline, and through consistent alignment between what you believe and how you live. When someone carries a sense of direction, they emit a frequency that others feel before they even open their mouths. Their presence becomes a form of leadership, not through control, but through inner congruence. This is especially visible in relationships. The person with purpose becomes deeply attractive because they are not searching for someone to complete them. They are already walking a meaningful path. They are not afraid of solitude because solitude gives them time to deepen their clarity. They do not depend on a relationship to feel fulfilled, but when they do commit, they bring the fullness of who they are into that bond. There is a certain peace in being with someone who knows where they are going, who has wrestled with their questions, who has faced their fears, who no longer needs to be everything to everyone. This kind of individual creates stability in a relationship. They are not shaken by minor conflicts. They don't rely on emotional highs to validate connection. Their presence is consistent. Their energy is clean. A woman once described how she felt when she met the man she eventually married. She said, "I didn't fall in love with how he looked. I fell in love with how he moved through the world. He had direction. He didn't rush. He didn't need approval. He was focused, and that focus made him stand out." She went on to say, "I realized I could build something with him, not because he was perfect, but because he was anchored." That's the word anchored. Purpose gives you an anchor, and people feel that anchor in you. In a world full of drift, of distraction, of people who chase without knowing why, the one who moves with intention becomes magnetic. Now let's be clear. This does not mean you need to have all the answers. A sense of purpose is not the absence of confusion. It is the commitment to seek, to ask, to refine. It is the refusal to live passively. It is the courage to shape your life, rather than waiting for others to hand you meaning. This kind of internal clarity makes you attractive in a way that no physical beauty can replicate. Because when someone sees you in your element, speaking about what you love, showing up for what matters to you, staying disciplined even when no one is watching, they see your essence. And essence is what connects soul to soul. There's a quiet power in someone who is aligned. When they speak, there's no pretense. When they commit, it's not out of fear or neediness, it's out of choice. They are not chasing attention. They are cultivating value, and people sense that. It's often said that you attract what you are. But more precisely, you attract what you reflect. When you reflect purpose, people who value depth begin to notice you, not just romantically, but across all areas of life. Friends, mentors, even strangers begin to gravitate towards you. Not because you tried to be seen, but because your energy offered something grounding in a chaotic world. One man shared how his life changed when he stopped trying to be attractive in the conventional sense. He was exhausted from always trying to impress, to wear the right things, to say the right lines. One day, after yet another short-lived relationship, he sat in silence and asked himself, "What do I actually stand for?" That question changed him. He began waking up earlier. He began studying topics that fed his soul. He joined a group that helped struggling youth, not for social recognition, but because it resonated. Slowly, without trying, people began to treat him differently. Women responded with more respect. Friends sought him for advice. Even his posture changed. He said, "I used to chase attraction, but when I focused on my purpose, attraction came to me." Purpose sharpens your presence. It gives you clarity on what to accept and what to reject. It helps you say no with dignity and yes with intention. This decisiveness is deeply appealing, especially in relationships where so many are lost in emotional confusion. Let us reflect on something essential here. Relationships are not meant to give us purpose, but to magnify the purpose we already carry. If you enter a relationship hoping it will give you direction, you will become dependent on the other person to make you feel alive. This creates imbalance. Over time, it breeds resentment, because no one can sustain your inner emptiness but you. But when two purposeful people come together, something extraordinary happens. The relationship does not drain. It energizes. It does not confuse. It clarifies. It becomes a sacred space where two people are not losing themselves, but becoming more of who they were already becoming. So how do we develop this kind of purpose? We begin with self-inquiry. Who are you when no one is watching? What values do you refuse to compromise, even when it costs you something? What are you willing to suffer for? Not because you enjoy pain, but because the meaning behind it matters. Purpose is forged in moments of silence. In early mornings when you rise before the world wakes up. In late nights when you reflect instead of distract. In ordinary routines done with extraordinary attention. It's in the decision to show up again when no one claps for you. It's in the patience to build when there's no guarantee. It's in the willingness to fail with integrity rather than succeed by betraying your truth. A woman who is rooted in purpose becomes luminous. She walks into a room and doesn't need to scan for approval. She is already aligned. A man who is led by purpose becomes powerful, not because of what he controls, but because of what he serves. This is what makes you attractive, not the temporary magnetism of status or style, but the enduring pull of someone who is becoming who they were meant to be. And here's the beauty: your purpose doesn't need to look like anyone else's. It doesn't need to be grand or glamorous. It needs only to be honest, to be real, to be pursued with care. There is an African proverb that says, when there is no enemy within, the enemies outside cannot harm you. In the same way, when your inner purpose is clear, the outer world begins to adjust. Opportunities come. Right people arrive, not because you begged for them, but because you became ready for them. Purpose is what gives your voice weight. It is what gives your eyes depth. It is what gives your silence meaning. And it is one of the most irresistible qualities a human being can carry. There is a kind of quiet radiance that exists in those who have made peace with their past. It is subtle. It does not scream for attention. It does not need to be validated or praised. It simply exists, like a still lake that reflects the sky without effort. When someone has healed old wounds, when they are no longer trapped in the echo chambers of resentment, regret, or guilt, they begin to carry a different kind of presence. And that presence is deeply attractive. It is attractive not because it performs, but because it feels safe. Not because it tries, but because it rests in truth. When a person is no longer burdened by old heartbreaks, they do not approach others with fear or suspicion. They no longer interpret every silence as rejection, every delay as abandonment, every flaw as betrayal. They are present, receptive, whole. Their emotional field is clean. They are able to give love without anxiety, receive it without doubt, walk away from what no longer serves them without bitterness. In a world where so many still carry the shadows of their past into their present relationships, the one who has done the work of healing becomes luminous. They are no longer seeking revenge through new love. They are no longer trying to prove their worth through performance. They are no longer trying to fill the emptiness with validation. They are simply being. And this is a form of strength that no amount of external beauty can replicate. I once spoke to a woman who had been through years of emotional abuse. When she finally left the relationship, she told herself she would not date for at least a year, not to punish herself, but to understand herself. That year, she journaled daily. She met with a mentor weekly. She learned to observe her emotional patterns, to understand the part of her that tolerated mistreatment. She began rebuilding her self-trust. She told me, I needed to learn that I was not broken. I was just disconnected from myself. When she did begin dating again, something had shifted. She was no longer attracted to chaos. She no longer tolerated inconsistency. Her energy was calm, focused, and firm, and she radiated a beauty that people couldn't quite explain. One man told her, there's something about you. You feel settled. He didn't mean stagnant. He meant whole. That wholeness was a result of her healing. Healing makes you attractive not only because it shifts your energy, but because it sharpens your boundaries. You are no longer reactive. You are discerning. You no longer chase people who ignore you. You no longer confuse drama for passion. You no longer need chaos to feel alive. You value your peace. And when someone values their own peace, they automatically begin to protect the peace of those around them. There is also a humility that comes with true healing. You are not arrogant in your wisdom. You are gentle. You do not project superiority. You project understanding. You can hold someone's pain without trying to fix it. You can witness another's struggle without becoming entangled in it. You do not rescue, you support. You do not control, you witness. This depth of emotional maturity draws others in. Because when people are around someone who has healed, they feel more free to be themselves. They don't feel the need to wear masks. They don't fear that their vulnerability will be weaponized. They don't worry that they will be misunderstood. They feel a sacred permission to exhale. I remember a conversation with an older man who had spent years alone after a painful divorce. He told me that in the beginning, he was ashamed of his past. He felt like he had failed. But over time, he began to see his solitude as a gift. My loneliness became my teacher, he said. It taught me where I had abandoned myself long before anyone else ever did. He began taking long walks in nature. He reads spiritual texts. He started attending a meditation group, not for religion, but for stillness. One day, he met a woman at a bookstore. They spoke about philosophy, then poetry. There was no flirtation, just presence. Weeks passed. The connection deepened. Eventually, they became partners. When I asked him what made her different, he smiled and said, she wasn't carrying ghosts. She had faced her shadows and made peace with them. There was no heaviness between us, only light. This is what healing does. It makes your relationships lighter. You stop bleeding on people who didn't cut you. You stop expecting others to save you. You stop performing for love. Instead, you show up with openness. And in doing so, you create space for real connection. Of course, healing is not linear. It is not a checklist. It is not something that can be forced. It is a process of remembering. Remembering who you were before the world told you what you had to be. Remembering the wisdom in your body, the truth in your intuition, the courage in your silence. And as you remember, you begin to release the need to be someone else. That authenticity is magnetic. But let us be honest, healing requires discipline. It is not always gentle. Sometimes it requires tears in the middle of the night. Sometimes it asks you to walk away from familiar pain. Sometimes it requires you to sit in silence while your ego screams for distraction. But over time, that discipline becomes devotion. And that devotion becomes radiance. When you walk into a room after healing, you don't need to announce yourself. People feel your energy before you say a word. Your presence says, I've been through the fire, and I came out softer, not harder. That softness is not weakness, it is grace. And grace is profoundly attractive. In relationships, the healed person does not attach from fear. They connect from clarity. They know the difference between a spark and a pattern. They don't chase red flags and call them fate. They don't confuse intensity with intimacy. They choose with wisdom. Because they've learned that peace is more important than performance. And even in disagreement, the healed individual is steady. They don't weaponize silence. They don't manipulate with emotion. They communicate with care. They pause before they react. They ask before they assume. They listen more than they speak. And their presence becomes a balm to the wounds of others. Not because they are perfect, but because they are whole. There's a Japanese practice called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold. The idea is not to hide the cracks, but to highlight them, to show where the object broke and how it was healed. The result is more beautiful than the original, because now the bowl carries a story. It carries strength, it carries light. We are like this. Our scars do not make us less attractive. They make us human, they make us real. But it is not the scar alone that attracts. It is how you wear it. If you hide it in shame, it weighs you down. But if you honor it with dignity, it shines. And others see that shine, even if they don't know why they are drawn to you. I once heard someone say, be the kind of person you needed when you were broken. That statement changed me, because it shifts the focus from seeking to serving, from hiding to healing, from performing to becoming. And when you become that kind of person, you no longer worry about being enough for others. You know you are enough as you are. And ironically, that is what makes others want to be close to you. Not because you need them, but because you have something to offer: your peace, your presence, your truth. So many people enter relationships hoping someone else will make them whole. But wholeness is not given. It is earned. It is grown. It is discovered in the soil of stillness, through the rain of honesty, under the sun of daily practice. And once you have tasted that wholeness, you begin to move differently. You no longer beg to be chosen. You no longer fear being alone. You no longer apologize for your depth. You attract, not by trying, but by being. This is the gift of healing, and it is one of the most attractive qualities a human being can possess. When a person begins to understand that attraction is not merely physical, when they realize it is rooted in energy, intention, presence, emotional mastery, and inner truth, they awaken to their own unseen beauty. The speech we have journeyed through is not about tips or tricks to become more desirable. It is about revealing what has always been within you. You are attractive when your presence calms rather than agitates. When your silence carries peace, not anxiety. When your purpose steadies your step. When your healed heart welcomes love, not as a remedy, but as a reflection of the wholeness you already carry. This kind of attractiveness does not fade with age or circumstance. It grows as you grow. It deepens as you deepen. When you live with emotional awareness, when you develop relationship clarity, when you carry yourself with purpose and integrity, and when you release the burdens of past pain, you begin to embody something the world cannot manufacture: truth. And truth is magnetic. So do not rush to be seen. Become still enough to be known. Do not try to be desirable. Become deeply aligned with who you are. Do not chase attention. Cultivate essence. Because the most beautiful people are not always the ones who turn heads, but the ones who turn hearts, without even trying. And that is what makes you truly, undeniably, powerfully attractive.